Like and subscribe to our channels for new episodes and updates. Today on Coffee Break, Quinton Lightbourne sits with Apryl and opens up about his own journey and shares his vision for an empowered generation of Bahamians.
Welcome to Coffee Break. I am your guest host, Apryl Sands, and today we have a special guest with us. But before I even introduce him, at any point during this interview, if you notice that I have on something really nice, then you'll know that I have a sponsor, and that is Key 92. You guys can look forward to a bunch of new designs from her shop at shopkey92.com. Anyway, let's get into our interview today. We have a special guest here today. He is former National Vice Chair and present leadership council member of the PLP, and he is a certified financial planner. Everyone, please welcome Quinton C. Lightbourne. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So I want to get into your journey a little bit.
Okay.
You have been a part of the PLP for a little while now. How much time exactly?
I would say a little over 11 years.
Wow.
Yes, I've been involved in the party for quite some time. It started with initially when I was the College of the Bahamas Union of Students president. I was elected president, and I was asked by the party at the time to speak at the National Convention on regards to youth issues, because one night was entitled Youth Night. And so I battled with the idea, and I was like, you know what, I think I want to do it, and I decided to make a presentation, and I gave a speech, and it was well received. It was a great night. I was able to get my ideas out there in terms of where I wanted to see the College of the Bahamas move at that time, and I was able to transition and move forward, and it just grew and developed into something so much greater for me in the party.
At that point, how old were you? At
that point, I was 18 years old.
So where was your mind at prior to? Where were you headed in life? What were you thinking about?
That's so interesting, because prior to that, before my journey, before going to the College of Bahamas, as an adolescent, I would consider myself a healthy young man, but a bit mischievous. I was asked to move or be removed from a school, and I went to another school, and then I had to just get my act together. And so upon graduating from high school, I was fortunate enough to get a 1-year scholarship to go to COB. And during that 1 year, I realized that I wanted to focus on finance and economics, in which I began to bloom. And so it just gave me that opportunity. And then it was time to go up to school. I got the opportunity from the government to realize that, to hone my talents. And I'm always, and I would tell a person all the time, if I did not get that opportunity, definitely the person that people see here today would not have been. Wow. And I know the road wasn't, completely paved, but I was fortunate enough and got some opportunities, and I took advantage of those opportunities, and I'm thankful that I was able to maximize my potential. It's
always that one pivotal thing that happens in your life that changes everything, and then you wonder, if that one thing didn't happen, where would you be, right?
I know, definitely. I know for me, like I said, I grew up in Carmichael and Flamingo Gardens, and growing up younger in Nassau Village, and so I've been able to see, and so I know I was fortunate enough. I had a good family structure, great parents, good advice, good guidance, good direction, and it really helped me. And I'm fortunate enough for so many different things, and I try, and what I always try to do, try to inspire persons that that stay with it, because one opportunity can change your life, and just have to stay in the game and stay relevant and stay positive, and you'll be able to succeed.
Absolutely. Now, what led you into furthering a career in politics?
Well, one of the definitely, in terms of furthering my career in politics, after that convention speech, I joined the Progressive Young Liberals, and I got involved, and I was able to become vice chairman of the Progressive Young Liberals. And then I went and started being I was the branch chairman in my constituency of Carmichael.
But hold on now. Was it just something to do? I mean, what made you want to really get deep into the party?
For me, it was all about trying to invoke change. And I realized that persons have sometimes a negative connotation with politics, but sometimes in order to create and see the change that you want for your country and your generation is that you have to become or get involved. And I realized that that's the only way you can get some things done. And so for me, I just saw where I felt as if I love people, I love interaction, I love just being in an environment where I can help persons and help people. Yeah. And so I realized that politics was the avenue or the vehicle that can get me there to help and impact change. And I was able to help persons in my community. And I love it. And I think it's self-fulfilling, and that's the most pure answer I can give you, because it's just a fulfilling feeling once you can help persons and empower and impact your community.
It feels right. It feels like this is what I should be doing.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you bring that up, because before we started the show, we had a dynamic conversation on, politicians and why I had this question, really. I was asking you and some of our crew in the back, but I was making the point of why would anyone want to get involved in politics? It's a risky business in terms of, family life, in terms of personal life, and I mean, I called it, a dirty business, which might be bad to say, because ultimately it's a good business. It's a good position to put yourself in, but only if you have the heart. And that's how I felt. I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about politicians that might get involved? I think it's no secret that there are some who are involved in the business and have no business being involved in the business, if that makes sense.
Well, no, that's a very good and interesting question, because it's like most elements in life is that, okay, if someone get involved, or even someone, they get a job and they don't excel or they don't like it, eventually they quit or they're fired. Yeah. And I think that is happening. So in politics is no difference. You see persons that are sincere about it, you see the longevity of it, and you have to love it. And I think, the reality is that, life is strange. And if you are not meant to be, or something is not your purpose, or you're totally driven to do it, you'll eventually fade away. And I think we've all seen that, all political spectrums, and, that is how it has been for quite some time. And I think that's the nature of the beast, that politics. And I think politics, and people should use politics for good. Of course, like anything else, persons come into politics for the wrong reasons, either if it's an egotistical standpoint. But
what is that about?
But I mean, it can be considered, or it could be tied to ego. But the thing is, it has to be, for me, I feel as if that it has to be directly related to helping people.
Absolutely.
Helping your environment, and just want to see, like for me, a big thing for me is that I want to help young persons, or persons like myself that just need that one opportunity that would totally help and transform their lives. And I think that's very important. And I think that's what drives me and a lot of other persons, especially in our party.
So tell me a little bit about, now that I'm going to shift gears here a little bit, because we have a lot to get through. We are in some interesting times. As you know, we're in the, I would say, hopefully the ending point of this pandemic, or maybe the middle. I don't know. Who's to say what's going to come from this? But ultimately, there is a concern of financial, financial issues, whether it's personally with some persons, whether it is nationally. And so I want to get your take on how persons should be, what persons should be thinking of, just maybe on a personal note for right now. We'll start there.
Okay, well, definitely, this pandemic, pretty much this global pandemic, has put a strain financially on so many persons in so many different levels, in terms of families being able to sustain a certain quality and standard of life. And I think it's very important. I think persons will definitely take this opportunity to reassess their personal finances, reassess how they move forward. And I think that's very important. Persons have to put together financial plans, put together specific budgets, and how you're going to save more effectively when the opportunity then arrives. And I think that's, and sometimes a lot of persons say, even in the darkest of times or hours, that you must sometimes look for the silver lining. And I think that's very important. And so it gives persons a realization that you cannot just rely sometimes on one source of income, or, one industry, even if you look at it from a country perspective. And so I think this is the opportunity in time where persons can reassess and move forward and be able to, prepare and position themselves for the future.
And persons are. I've seen a lot of new businesses come about. What do you think about having a new business in a time like this?
Definitely. I think, once you tap into what's a necessity, and I've realized a lot of persons in our generation have seen great innovation. We look at a company, there's a delivery company that named Craven, like totally blew up.
Yeah,
because
in the middle of the pandemic.
In the middle of the pandemic, because it shows that, okay, it's something innovative, it's something new, and something that persons in our generation realize that this is what it is now. And so there's never a restriction, I feel, in terms of when you can start to open up a new business. Some of the greatest businesses have been developed through the pandemic. Uber, Airbnb, WhatsApp. Those were developed or brainchilds of the first financial recession in 2007, 2008. And look at those components now.
Absolutely.
And so, like, we must look at these opportunities not as sometime, as a dire situation, but definitely an opportunity to excel and push your vision and dream forward.
So what's your thoughts on, of course, the government assisting persons right now in terms of new businesses? And of course, as you know, the Prime Minister would have just made a address and spoken to young people in particular about granting them opportunities for new businesses. What do you think about that kind of thing?
Okay, I think that's a step in the right direction, but it turns like you have to make sure, so the SBDC, they're in the process of allowing or giving grants to young entrepreneurs between the age of 18 to 30 years old. And it talks about grants that they don't have to pay back, where I think it can go up to a maximum of $5,000. The thing is, you have to put stuff in place and make certain incentives. It's not just giving me, it's like, okay, I give you a car, but you don't have a driver's license, you don't know how to drive. So what's the point of giving me a car if I don't have the prerequisites? And I think that's very important. You have to put young people in a position for them to excel. It's not just to say I did it, but also making sure. So like there are persons I ask, what are the research or the statistics to show that, okay, we've granted persons money for business, how has the business done, or how is the business doing? So you have to be able to put businesses and put young persons in positions for their businesses to excel. And I think more has to be done than just say we're going to give you a grant.
What do you suggest? What are you thinking?
Well, what I'm thinking is definitely, to my understanding, that they offer courses where they help you set up a business plan and all that stuff, but continual help along the way about showing them how to budget their finances, to making sure that their finances, making sure that they find the best product. And turns and also from a government or policy perspective, give incentives. If a young person has a product that they want to come in, and if customs duty is still exponential, then you're pretty much defeating the purpose. So you have to be able to help them and assist them along the way. And I think it's a gradual process. It's not just I help you today and then you're on your own. You have to hold an infant's hand. When they reach a certain point, then you could let their hand go and then they can walk and they could eventually run on their own.
Yeah. I also want to ask you just about national deals that we've made as a country. We seem to have a history of making bad business decisions where we sell ourselves short, particularly in the field of natural resources. I want to get your take on that and how we should begin to look at natural resources from this country, and then also in general, why do we make the decisions that we've made?
Well, definitely. When it comes to natural resources, the Bahamas is, filled with so much natural resources on all of our islands, especially in some of our southeastern islands. That there's salt, there's sisal, aragonite, there's so many different things. But the key in terms from a financial perspective is that it's the refinery of the product. It's not just having the raw product itself, it's being able to refine it, and that's where the real lucrative money comes in. And I think we have transitioned as a country from a generation where we just looked at getting companies in and we got a job, we're working for them. But now it has to be a talk of an economic revolution. And I think, our forefathers like Sir Lyndon Lewis, they fought for the social revolution. But now I think it's our mandate as millennials and even Generation Z to make sure that we empower our generations and our country economically.
Why
and I think
are we
that's
not
very
doing
important.
that?
And I think because the tools haven't been in place, and I think the tools have to be put in place. It has to be a mandate, whereas foreign direct investments, if it comes in, is that this is going to be a Bahamian-driven industry, whether we like it or not. And so at the end of the day, it's an investment. There's opportunities that they can go north, it can go south. But if we have to allow and put Bahamians in positions to own these industries.
But why do we struggle to see it like that?
I think definitely it becomes a policy decision and a vision. But I think definitely the Progressive Liberal Party has shown time after time that we are a party that we want persons of inclusion. We want Bahamians to be involved in this process. And I think that's very important. We look at, I've seen demonstrations recently about Aragonite, about so many different things, but Bahamians must be at the forefront. And Bahamians must be able, the government must put Bahamians in the position where they can be key stakeholders. They can invest, they can be on boards, they can make sure that we are seeing the process done to the completion. And that's where we can benefit economically. We have to improve our negotiation strength. Persons have to be able, or Bahamians have to be able to be at the table to speak and articulate our ideas. So once we get to the world standard, we know exactly what we're talking about. We're not just in a country where the natural resource is here, but now we're to a point where we understand, we know the ins and outs, the complete details of the industry, and so we're able to then now look at it globally and expand the natural resources, not just having the natural resources, but refining it, and then ultimately distributing it to the world. And so we have a complete cycle where we benefit as a country trifold.
I still want to get to the bottom of why we as Bahamians struggle to value empowering other Bahamians. I understand that the two parties, there's a different outlook. I think for the most part we can agree with that. But for the most part, I still think we struggle in seeing that Bahamians can own, and can develop and can produce. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of where does that mentality come from? Do you have an idea, or?
Well, I can't say I have an idea, because for me, philosophically, I'm of the view I want to see every Bahamian excel and succeed. Mm-hmm. So for me, I guess certain persons or certain parties or generations have felt that, the those stuff should be constrained. But I'm of the view that every Bahamian should have equal opportunity to be able to excel and maximize his greatest potential. Yeah. And I think it should be equal or level field, where persons that they're not industries that are restricted to certain individuals or certain Bahamians or a certain class. Mm-hmm. We also look at the natural resources, the conversation of marijuana. Whenever or if it does become legal for recreational use or medicinal purposes, it must be an open playing field, whereas it's not a cartel type situation. So any Bahamian, and we should live in a capitalistic society, whereas the best product, the best service wins, and it's not a disadvantage to any one group or person.
There's obviously a lot of talk right now in terms of shifting our number one industry, moving out of the tourism sector and beginning to think about other areas right now. What do you like? Are we going to get closer to doing that, do you think, or is that a long road ahead of us to start to shift from that?
I think we're definitely going to get there. I think the global pandemic has shown that we have to be more diverse as a country. And I think it's imperative of any government, especially, I'm sure that the Progressive Liberal Party sees the importance of developing new industries and moving our country forward to not just rely solely on tourism. Yes, it's a golden goose. It has been beneficial to us for so many years, but we must see other things, and we have so much potential. I have this wild idea that southern countries in the Bahamas should tap into the Latin American market, whereas we can even tap into touristic, manufacturing, or agricultural, and industrial plants in those southern islands, whereas we diversify our economy, where we have persons moving to those islands where they're employed, they're in the industry, they're moving, and then we have our North American market. So we have to be very much diverse, especially moving forward when our population is growing. And this is the most educated population in Bahamian history. Highly educated, highly innovative, and we cannot, and it would be a disservice if we rely solely on tourism.
Yeah, absolutely. I would, and like you had just mentioned, now is really the perfect time. To even be thinking about it, so that way we can get closer to that. Well, of course, we have more with you, but I definitely want to take our break at this moment and then get right back to more with Quinton after this.
Every election cycle, they tell us, this is the big one. This is the election of our lives. This is the election that will decide your future. Well, guess what? They're finally right. With record unemployment, a global pandemic, and an economy on life support, this is the election that matters. This election, vote like your life depends on it, because this time it does. Vote like your job depends on it, because this time it does. Vote like your education depends on it, because this time it does. Vote like your future depends on it, because this time it does. No matter what you do, just vote. To register to vote, please visit the Parliamentary Register Office on Farrington Road.
Welcome back, everyone, to Coffee Break, and we're still here with Quinton having a great conversation. I kind of want to lean back into what we were saying just prior to. I think our people have a way of looking at our natural resources as if it is a government issue that we should trust them to handle. When they don't handle it right, we get mad. When they handle it right, we applaud. Instead of, though, a people issue, not a people issue, but a cultural thing. Like, this is our land. Mm-hmm. These are our resources. Is there a way that we should be involved in thinking about being, producing certain things, being a part of a certain industry? Should we begin to think of it in that way, or do we continue to rely on the government to handle these things for us?
I think, that's a very good question. I think it should be looked at in a tier system, whereas definitely the PPP is public-partner partnerships, where we encourage these investors to partner up with local businessmen, local opportunities, investment groups, so they can be a part of this industry. Definitely, Bahamians must look at it where they are involved. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, which was enacted in 2016, where the purpose of the Sovereign Wealth Fund itself was to ensure that all of investments or lucrative or assets or monetary gains that was done through natural resources, that it must be pooled into an account, and that a financial institution would reinvest, and so that money are there or is there for future generations of Bahamians. It's an innovative and transformative idea, which is less or hardly talked about now. And I think that shows a great disservice to what the purpose of in terms of being able to help Bahamians. And I think that's very important. We must maximize it. There are certain countries where the wealth fund has just been exponential. Mm-hmm. And they have some wealth funds in Asia have over $2 billion where they've earned over time from natural resources. And so now it's something for future generations. And I think that's very important. And it also comes back from, I believe, from a bureaucracy standpoint, where we must cut the bureaucracy in terms of getting stuff done. There's a age-old adage, which is, I've seen it first time working in the office of the Prime Minister at Bahamas Investment Authority, how investments or how the process has taken so long. Mm-hmm. And it has not changed to this day. And I think that's important. From something being signed and approved in cabinet, it takes 18 months, sometimes more. The minimum is 18 months, but sometimes it takes so much longer in order to get the shovel in the ground, to get the project started. And I think that's the great disservice, because we must start moving, and so governments must start moving, that we can make sure that these stuff are done in a timely manner, because we're talking about persons' lives, we're talking about livelihoods, job opportunities, business opportunities for countless Bahamians, and we must remember that when moving forward.
How do we begin to, I think, and this goes back to what you said, this divide between people and then the government. How should there be a new approach for us as persons to begin to look at what we would think are governmental issues differently? What are things we can begin to do? I mean, as people, even in this pandemic, we still see it as a government issue. Like, they need to fix it, and we're gonna blame you guys if it's not fixed. But in a way, there's still things as people we can begin to see and look ourselves in the mirror for. Like, I mean, that's been a discussion within itself. Like, is it the people's fault or is it the government's fault? But how do we begin to look at things like this when it comes to us as a culture?
Yeah, so we must change it. Like, we cannot just solely rely on a government for change. It must come from within. And I think that has been important. It becomes imperative, though, but I think for organizations, in order to foster that conversation, foster that movement, foster that push, so that we can improve our country. Because, politicians or political parties, they have to fulfill a mandate that the people present to them. And so it's important that we state our case as Bahamian citizens and say, this is what we want. We want to be able that foreign direct investment should not take 18 months to 2.5 years of being completed. That should not happen. These stuff should be in place. We should ensure that it's transparent. We must ensure that Bahamians are a part of this conversation and that we're moving forward. And I think that's what the urge is, and it becomes a process where we have to push for this because even though I'm a millennial in the younger generation, I look at past experience. Independence was not something that was totally or widely accepted when it first was presented. It was a momentum, it was moved forward. More and more persons bought into it and they pushed it to the governmental level. So that is the responsibility of us as Bahamians to ensure that if we want these stuff, that we need to push for these stuff. And that is why I continue and I will always say that the economic revolution is the most important and pertinent issue right now for millennials and future generations of this country. That we must economically empower ourselves for future generations.
I like that you brought up that you are, obviously a part of that younger generation and then being a part of, obviously, a party like the PLP. I want to know where your mindset is in terms of, what's your plans? What do you have in store for, bringing someone like yourself to this type of party? What's something that is important to you that you want to see come to light from this party with your involvement?
Okay, well, definitely. One of my fruitions of one of the things that I wanted to see done is in place now. More and more young persons are heavily involved in the Progressive Liberal Party. In terms from a leadership perspective, we have a very young and dynamic deputy chairman. Our leadership council, our national vice chairmen, so many persons are in the millennial age group underneath 30 and 35. And so it shows where the party is shifting its thought process and its evolution and seeing how in the working of the party, putting the platform together, more and more it's a diverse group of getting young persons, middle-aged, and senior members of the party. And so for me, that's what I want to see. And we are definitely a party, a big tent. We're inclusive of everyone. And I think that's very important. And I'm happy to see where the party is growing. As I said, I've been a part of the party for over 12 years, and so I've seen how the party has evolved and how the arms and everything is wide open arms, and where persons are encouraging. And I think that's very important, moving the party forward so that we are successful, not just in the next general election, but for future general elections.
I feel like you're one of a few people that I know of who is very unbiased. I feel like you're in this role, but you don't walk and talk like, you're a part of just a one-party dynamic. I feel like you carry yourself pretty easy. Like you're a guy who, you're okay with having conversations across the room with someone else. Would you agree?
Yes, definitely. I think it's a matter of being...
How important is that?
I think it's very important for good governance. If you look at all political structures, you must be able to negotiate with certain parts or certain sides of the table to make sure that something is being brought forward for the betterment of the Bahamian public and for the country. And I think that's very important, open dialogue. It's just a matter of respect in terms you have to be able, of course, respect you as a man and as a woman and as individually. But this is my view and this is my position. And this is my mandate, what I must carry out. And I understand yours to a certain extent. But the actuality and the primary point is that the Bahamian people have to be satisfied. They must be the top priority. And I think that's very important. And I think more and more persons involved in the political element and realm are seeing that, that you have to understand that it takes a team to put everything together, and I see it all the time.
Do you think we talked about this last week on the show, but having conversations without having to be combative or competitive, how important is that? Was that deliberate for you to make a conscious decision to say, okay, I need to be a guy, if I'm going to be a part of this party, I need to be open to still,
So for me, it's very important. Like it's, most persons that know me, like, I'm definitely not a passive or pushover person. I help my where I stand. And so the thing is not, you have to make a decision for yourself and realizing that you must move forceful but with intent. And I think that's very important for the party. And I think, for me, it came as a natural because I just want to see things done. Some persons just want to see things done, and sometimes you just have to get it done. And sometimes clashing and bucking heads
just stalls time.
It just stalls time.
We look at, President-elect Biden and how he comes across with this message of unity. Whether you voted for me or not, I'm going to do what's in the favor of you. and everyone else. How important is that going to be in this election, despite who wins? Especially because we're in a pandemic right now.
I think that's very important. I think there mustn't always be a message of unity. United in love and service. That is what we must strive for, because at the end of the day, we are the Bahamas. Everyone is included in this Bahamas. I want to see every island in our archipelago excel and grow. And I think that's what should be the mandate. And, like you said, as Biden said, he's the United States of America president, not just for the Republican or Democratic Party. And the same thing. And I think we are gradually moving towards that.
Do you really think so?
I think we are. The process may not be as fast as some may want it to be, but I think we are moving.
I think so, because fundamentally, especially a lot of younger persons are kind of over the whole this and that.
Yeah.
It's really about, what are you saying?
Agreed.
You know what I mean? And so...
And like I said, see, that generational gap where some person is just going to vote just because, but it's changing. It's the ideas, what you're bringing, what's your platform, are your innovative ideas, are you going to see it happen, are you really going to get it done? And I think that goes a longer way, or is going to go a longer way in terms of getting future generations of Bahamians to buy into your party, and especially the Progressive Liberal Party. And the PRP has shown from time immemorial that the Progressive Party is the most innovative party with the greatest ideas. National health insurance, national training agency, so many different things, BOMSI, so it just shows that these are the things that we have ideas and we bring them to fruition, and that is the greatest thing about the Progressive Liberal Party, that I think that's why we stand head and shoulders over any other political party in this country.
Okay. So, particularly last election, I mean, you could see that tensions were really high, right?
Yeah.
There was a very angry tone, it seemed like, where there were persons just kind of, just against each other.
Yeah.
Right? And then, of course, and this was of course even after elections, and then even the way that things went about, right? We obviously know that there were court matters that happened. There were things that, and that really, for a little while, I think we're now kind of past that place. But in that, I remember it was just bad for people, right? Like, there was this divide. People were like, yeah, lock him up. All these things. Like, I want to know from you, how critical is it to not get to that point? And we kind of see that now happening in the States too. I mean, there's a scare that they might go into a civil war, but I mean, they have a racism issue. We have a divide just against some classes, and then of course now just some parties, maybe political divide. But nonetheless, how critical is that to not be in that space, with the elections coming up now and just in general?
I think it's very important, and I think you answered the question. If you look at our neighbors, our counterparts in America, you see where the hate and the anger, where it leads. Doesn't lead to anything positive. It leads to total chaos, in some cases anarchy. And so the message of love and unity and being able to just excel and above all of it, surpass that is the only way. Martin Luther King said, only love can beat hate. Hate can't beat hate. So you have to go above. Sorry to using these adages or these cliches. Michelle Obama. Everyone knows Michelle.
Go high, right?
So the thing is that you have to develop and be the agent of change.
Yeah.
You have to be able to tell a person that we're going to do this above board.
Yeah.
We're going to have decency. We're going to have order. And at the end of the day, I think that will show, and the history will show that, hey, that the right decision was when you decided to be above board and to show class and to show that you are above the dirty politics. And I think that's very important.
I also think it speaks volumes to how important, I've seen now, I always thought we are free people, we can speak, we can handle ourselves. But after seeing, and I hate going back to the US, but it's just for an example, after seeing Trump's administration and a lot of the things that he said and how it actually affected the climate, that was amazing. And I think it speaks volumes to even us. How important the way leadership speaks to people and how it actually can change the tone of persons, right?
It definitely can. I think, you cannot find the hate. You can't find it and try to You know, you're not gonna talk about it, but you see it over there, but you're not gonna address it. So because for some sick people, like they like that, they want it to foster and so it fester. And so I think that's very important, where you have to be able to say, you have to out it. You have to show that, hey, this is not what we're going to do. We're going to move forward. And this is how we're going to conduct ourselves. And I think that's very important. You know, I know sometimes it's hard for a lot of people to accept, because sometimes, you know, when they hit me, I want to hit them back. You know, but it comes a time where you just have to realize that, hey, this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to do it the right way. And good always prevails over evil. So for me, it's that, you know, sometimes you do want to hit back. You know, but you have to realize that it just can't happen. You just have to show that you're different. You know, during the last political campaign, we've seen the slander, we've seen they going to jail, and they're doing all this stuff, and, you know, pulling personal attacks in, attacking person's family and their children. It's totally uncalled for. And I think that is how we must move that narrative, that we must go back to just being our brother's keeper and not pulling each other down. And I think that's important. I think if we don't do that, we're setting up ourselves for a disastrous fall.
And it's not easy taking the high road. I remember, you know, that same saying with Michelle Obama, where she says, what is it? You
when
know
they
it.
go low, you go high.
You go high, and then I remember Charlemagne saying, but I just want to go low. And is that not the truth? Like,
yes, you are, like, I mean, most persons you would be tempted.
Yes.
You know, it's not easy. And then that's where it becomes a matter of self-constraint.
Yeah.
And just realizing, you know, that you just have to be better. You know, so some persons take the approach, they look at it like Martin Luther King, some look at it as a Malcolm X. And so it's just a matter on what you feel as if will be more effective. You know, but my personal opinion, I just think the route of just being above board, not doing any of those kind of stuff will make you prevail at the end.
Absolutely. I look forward to a lot of things that you have coming. And, you know, I've obviously watched you and have seen you. And I think a lot of persons who have watched you are looking forward to what you bring and what more is to come from Quinton Lightbourne. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking time to speak with us. And we look forward to seeing more of you.
Appreciate it.
So that's it for us on Coffee Break with Apryl. But we will be here next week, same time, same place.